He was only trying to live, breathing the same air, walking the same streets, daring to dream like anyone else. But in a world that saw his skin before his humanity, every step carried risk. One glance, one accusation, one fabricated reason could strip him of freedom, or worse, his life. What happened to him was not an accident. It was a mirror, reflecting the painful truth of a nation's promise broken again and again. How did one ordinary moment unravel into a tragedy that still speaks to us today? Marcus was 23, full of restless energy and quiet ambition. He worked long hours at a warehouse on the edge of town, saving every paycheck with the dream of going back to school. To his neighbors, he was the kid who shoveled snow in the winter and mowed lawns in the summer. To his family, he was the one who never forgot to check in, even on the busiest days. His life was ordinary, even predictable, until the night it wasn't. That evening had been no different than a dozen before it. The sky was heavy with summer heat, the sidewalks humming with the sound of cicadas as Marcus cut through the same streets he'd traveled since he was a child. His earbuds draped over his neck, his mind wandering between tomorrow's shift and the textbooks he hoped to afford next semester. But beneath the routine, something else quietly brewed. A figure waiting in the shadows, an engine humming too long at the corner, a gaze fixed not on who he was, but on what he represented. Marcus didn't notice the shift in the air. Not yet. He couldn't have known that on this familiar walk. Home, every step was carrying him closer to a line he never intended to cross, and one he might not come back from. Marcus's pace was steady, his head down, his thoughts far from danger. But then, there it was, the sound, a low rumble of tires rolling slow against the pavement. He thought maybe it would pass, but the engine lingered, matching his steps. When he glanced sideways, the car crept alongside him, windows tinted dark, moving just close enough to be felt. He told himself not to stare, not to give a reason, just keep walking, keep breathing. The weight in his chest grew heavier with every turn of his sneakers against the cracked concrete. A sharp flash of light pierced his eyes, headlights suddenly washing over him. The car had pulled ahead, blocking the sidewalk. His heart stumbled. A door unlatched with a metallic thud. Out stepped a man in uniform. The badge glinted faintly beneath the lamppost, but his face carried something colder than authority. "Where are you headed?" The words came low, edged with suspicion. Marcus's throat tightened. He shuffled his backpack higher on his shoulder, explaining simply, "Home." But home wasn't an answer the officer wanted to hear. Another step closer. Another demand. "What are you carrying?" It was the same bag he carried every shift, stuffed with work gloves and the leftover sandwich his mother had packed. But in this moment, the bag wasn't just fabric and food. It was a trigger, a justification waiting to be invented. The street was empty, eerily quiet, as if the world had turned its face away. Marcus knew better than to raise his voice. Better than to run. Better than to look angry, even when fear was boiling under his skin. Because in their eyes, fear would be mistaken for guilt, and anger might be mistaken for threat. His hands itched to pull out his phone, to call someone, anyone, but even that felt like it could be seen as defiance. He'd seen the headlines. He'd heard the stories. One wrong move, and he could be the next headline. The officer's questions turned sharper. Faster. His flashlight sliced across Marcus's face, then down to his bag, back up to his skin. The silence between each beat grew unbearable. Marcus could hear his own heart pounding in his ears, faster than the words coming at him. Then came the sound that froze every muscle. Another door slamming shut. A second officer stepped out, eyes just as hard, stance just as ready. 2 against 1. Empty street. No witnesses. Marcus felt the ground tilt beneath him. He wasn't just being questioned anymore. He was being trapped. Every story he had ever heard, friends harassed, cousins cuffed, strangers beaten, flashed in his mind, each one whispering the same terrible warning. "This is how it begins." He swallowed, forcing his voice steady as he answered again, explaining where he worked, pointing at the gloves and crumbs in his bag. But explanations didn't seem to matter. The flashlight lingered, the silence stretched, and the officer's presence pressed down like a weight designed to crush. The night that had started with cicadas humming now pulsed with tension so thick, it felt like the air itself was suffocating him. Each second dragged, winding tighter and tighter, as if the world was holding its breath for what might happen next. And Marcus began to wonder, no matter what he said, no matter how carefully he moved, would it ever be enough? The street was swallowed in silence, broken only by the officer's barked command. "Hands where I can see them!" Marcus froze, his arms trembling mid-air, palms open, as though even his fingertips could betray him. The car headlights burned, hot against his skin, casting him in harsh light like a criminal on display. His mind screamed, "Stay calm! Stay still! Don't give them a reason!" But every second, reason slipped further away. The second officer circled behind him, boots crunching against gravel. Marcus felt the presence at his back, the weight of unseen eyes scanning for the slightest excuse. His own breath came shallow, each inhale tight, unsure if it would be his last. Then it happened. The officer yanked his bag from his shoulder, tearing it open. His gloves fell to the ground, the sandwich wrapper drifting onto the pavement. Harmless things, transformed into suspicion. The flashlight hovered over the debris as if evidence of a crime was hiding in plain sight. Marcus stuttered his truth. Again, he was coming from work, heading home. But the faces staring back didn't soften. They hardened. The silence was no longer empty. It was dangerous. And then the hand reached for the holster. The click of the strap, letting loose, shattered the night air like a warning shot. Marcus's heart dropped into his stomach. In that instant, time slowed. The stories he'd carried in his memory weren't distant headlines anymore. They were his reality. On one side, a gun ready to be drawn. On the other, a young man with nothing but open palms and a life full of untold dreams. The world balanced on a knife's edge, teetering between survival and tragedy, fairness and brutality. And the question hung heavy, unspoken yet deafening. Would this be the night Marcus's name joined the list, a name chanted, mourned, and repeated because justice had failed once again? That night, Marcus walked away alive. But survival was not the same as freedom. His body moved forward, but his spirit carried the weight of headlights burning into his skin, of voices that demanded answers he'd already given, of the silent knowledge that his innocence had never been enough. He reached his doorstep, yet the safety of home felt different, fragile, conditional, borrowed. For days afterward, he replayed the moment when the holster strap snapped open. The sound lingered like an echo, a reminder of how thin the line had been between life and death. He had been one decision, one heartbeat, one stereotype away from becoming a name etched into protests, hashtags, and memorials. But Marcus's story did not end in front-page headlines or courtroom trials. And that detail is its own kind of tragedy, because the most chilling reality is that countless stories like his never make it to the news, the stops on dark streets, the humiliations in silence, the nightly rituals of fear passed down like unwanted inheritances. Marcus lived, yet the night changed him. It drilled into him a truth that communities of color have known for generations. Safety is never guaranteed when your very existence is seen as a threat. And so his story is not just his own. It is part of a truth America wrestles with still, a truth of broken promises and unanswered cries for justice. The question is no longer what happened to Marcus that night. The question is, how many more nights must end this way before the world decides that enough is truly enough.